I am a suicidal person.
It took me multiple tries to say this without hesitation or shame. Yes, shame. Through the years, I have been told and reminded how suicide is an unspeakable sin or an unforgivable thing. Nobody sits and talks about the triggers, the everyday things that make it worse. Everyone mostly mentions suicide in hushed tones as if somehow the people who are suicidal are fragile like glass or are criminals for thinking about taking their life.
I don't think people entirely understand how it works, really. I mean, if I was a coward, I would run away from decisions and confrontations.
The very definition of coward says, someone who is unable to control fear and so shrinks from danger or trouble. Don't you feel suicide is the exact opposite of that?
When you're suicidal, your head is nothing but confrontations with your own self about how you lack at functioning like a normal human being. Your self-esteem, self-confidence, basically anything with self drops.
Do you think it's easy being in a place of such brokenness? Do you not wonder how difficult would it be to live inside that head with thoughts that decay your emotional and logical capacity? A place so deranged and messed up that it finds no other option but to escape. Yes, I said escape because that's what suicide is to most people who attempt it. I'm not normalizing the idea of suicide. I'm not saying that it's okay for a person to give up their life. All I'm saying is that when you come across a person who has suicidal tendencies, your first words should not be, but have you thought about your parents or those that are close to you, or that this is a really stupid thing to do or even think of, because chances are that they already know what you're pointing out. Did you also know that of the suicide deaths observed per 100,000 people, 32,000 of them happened because of family problems? And family problems are not the only causes that were observed. Substance abuse, addiction, illnesses, and so many more that you can see here contributed a noticeable chunk. India has one of the highest rate of suicides per year in the age group of 15 to 29. And it's not just our generation, but individuals as young as 15-year-olds are equally affected by this. When a nation this big has an underlying epidemic of that scale, there has to obviously be something wrong with the way they are growing up.
And I'm not talking about how kids who don't get a smartphone commit suicide in anger. That's bad parenting. I'm talking about a more social setting, a place where children spend as much time, if not more, than their own homes, their schools.
A child's personality is shaped through the years of sharing their space with their teachers and fellow students in their school. They learn to form opinions and become more aware of their surroundings and of what's happening in this world.
So when they learn that the priority of their teachers and their parents lie just in their academic performance, they really start to question their judgment and understanding. When a low-performing kid is pressured into performing their best and yet are reminded of how they're not doing good enough, their sense of self-worth gets majorly damaged.
They become subdued and cut their communication with their peers or teachers or even their parents. This type becomes quite prone to getting bullied because of how easily they can be targeted. And this can very easily lead to self-harm. All of this creates a bubble of toxicity that bursts out later in their teenage years as serious mental illnesses. With this level of negativity, it's no wonder that a student commits suicide every hour in India. The solution is not to tell them how it's weak to succumb to your struggles and that willpower is the answer to everything. In India, parents mostly go into a mode of denial where they might be open to talk about the struggles children face but would be quick to say,
"नहीं, but हमारा बच्चा तो thankfully बहुत अच्छा है," as soon as their own children are mentioned. Parents need to understand and realize that their children are not their project experiments or their ships that haven't yet sailed.
Talking about mental health and having someone trust you with sharing their struggles is like playing trust fall with a child. You have to outstretch your arms before you ask the kid to jump. Because if you don't, then they're going to land badly and hurt themselves, and the next time you ask them to jump, they would hesitate. Solving the epidemic of suicides has to start with acknowledging the struggles that an individual faces. We have to let them open up the way they want to open up. The child, the school, the parents all have to work together to understand where are things going wrong and what are the possible ways in which they can be fixed. No person willingly wants to harm themselves. So please, try and understand how bad things would have to be for them to even consider self-harm, let alone give up their life. When you guilt shame a person about how they're throwing away their life, you are not helping. For someone who is already on the edge, it only acts as a fuel of how they can never be good enough. If you want to help, your first sentence should be, "How can I help?" Or, "Do you want to talk about what has been bothering you?" when you come across a person with suicidal tendencies. Talk, listen, and understand. For someone who has survived years in a body that feels foreign to me, like a cold dark room with no windows to let in the light, I feel incredibly proud of myself for pulling through this far. And no, I do not think I am a coward. I do not think I have it easy or that there's an obvious solution that I'm missing out.
Sit across me, learn about my struggles, and try to understand or figure out what works for me. And you'd understand that trying to help someone out is really not that difficult. You only need to listen, not so you can respond, but so you can understand.